Hello, and thanks for joining us here at the Beyond Distribution with GTDC podcast. Today's episode features Blaine Raddon, who is the CEO of the channel company, and it was recorded during their extremely popular exchange event. Blaine talks to Frank about the evolution of the channel from the traditional model to the complexity of today's ecosystems and the importance of supporting the customer through the transition. Thanks again for listening and enjoy the episode.
Okay, welcome everybody to another edition of the GTDC Beyond Distribution podcast. I'm here live on site at the Channel Company Exchange event in Denver, and I'm thrilled to have with me the CEO of the Channel Company, Blaine Raddon. Hello, Blaine.
Thanks for having me, Frank.
Good to see you again. Yeah. So, how's the event going? Tell me a little bit about it.
Well, first of all, this is the biggest event we've ever had.
Yep.
It's our second August exchange. This was the first event we kicked off last year, so we've done a full year of our events in person. So That's been a nice, the energy, and it's been nice to see everybody get back together. I think last year when we did this, we were kind of ahead of the curve, and people are starting to catch up. We've had more partners here. We have over 300 partners, over 100 vendors, sponsors, and just the energy that we see and everything about this event has been fun, and we're really excited about the next couple of days.
Yeah, I felt it. I walked around today a little bit. I was here this morning, and one of the things I commented to somebody earlier, good news, I guess, is about 95% of the people here I didn't know, I didn't recognize, they didn't know me, and so that tells me you're getting, the next generation of solution providers, vendors, et cetera, which is good.
Yeah, and that's by design. We always try to make sure there's about 60-65% of the audience is refreshed, so that the sponsors coming in have new audiences. It gives these solution providers a chance to come in and rotate through. So that's by design. It really does keep everything new.
Yeah. So what are some of the topics that you're covering, like in the main tent? What some of the things? I heard you had a panel this morning on sort of the 40-year anniversary.
Yeah, that was fun. I got to actually participate on that one myself.
Right.
So we had Donna Grojan, we had a couple of solution providers, the edit team ran it for us. And it was just talking about what's gone on in the last 40 years and kind of where we see this thing going, the changes. I think one of the themes that came out of that discussion was the channel is built on a natural change capability. They have evolved as the industry has evolved, and those who don't evolve don't tend to survive. But you see some of these channel partners have been around for 20, 30, 40 years, and just think back on what we talked about on the panel, the amount of change that they've gone through and major, technology shifts and how they've had to evolve their business model and, change from, what used to be a very, vendor-centric, I'm an extension of the vendor, to now a very customer-centric. They become an extension of their customer, and their customer segmentation is the most important thing to them. Their brand has become a lot more important than it ever was in the past. They were always representing the other manufacturers' brands, and now it's really important for them to build their own. And so those kind of changes were all part of the discussion. It's pretty exciting. Yeah,
I think that transition's been made for a lot of the years, for a lot of the 40 years. I wasn't part of all of them, but I was probably part of 30 of them. There was always that discussion, always that debate. Whose brand is it? Who owns the customer? I think that's settled out pretty much. And by the way, my experience, the vendor community's happy about that.
Yeah.
I don't think the vendor community has any issue at all with that, because what they're looking for from the channel is that extension, right, of their business. So I think it's great. I also did a short video on the 40-year piece, and I was sad to say that I probably won't be around for the next 40. So, you probably won't be either.
Oh, I know I won't be, but you might be.
I don't think so.
You got a little more energy.
Yeah, I don't think so. But anyway, so, well, good. So the other thing, Blaine, that you guys have traditionally done here at this event, well, there's actually two things. One is the ARC awards, right, and the score that each vendor gets based on the input by the solution providers. And I used to anxiously look forward to seeing that when I was on the vendor side. So tell me about that. You still doing that?
So yeah, the actual ARC recognition will be in the October issue of CRN. Mm-hmm. We've completed the research And what we're doing now is going through the preliminary research with each of our vendor partners to show them how they did. The ARC, for those who don't know, we ask about 21 categories. We go out to a manufacturer's specific partner base, and we ask them questions around ease of doing business, product quality, support, go-to-market strategy, programs, and we get a rating. They get to compare themselves not only against the industry, but they also get to compare in their category. How did they do against their category peers? When you and I were together at Juniper and IBM, these were always really important. Yeah. It's your way of measuring, totally. And it's not, most people do a partner satisfaction survey, but you're talking to your partners, there's no context to it. Right. This puts your satisfaction completely in context. Yep. And I could always, when I would look at these year over year, you could always kind of see the fruits of your labor, because you would see your scores go up, or if you got a bad score, you would take action and be able to turn that around. So I think they're really valuable, and we get really good feedback from our sponsors of this.
Well, the methodology is tight, right? Which is one of the things I liked about it, right? Which was there wasn't a lot of, moving around the categories. There wasn't a lot of, subjective kinds of things. It was tight methodology. So therefore, you had to sort of perform, and you couldn't manipulate it. And the way you manipulate it, frankly, was doing the things you're supposed to do as a vendor. Yeah. And then the solution providers, either approve of it or not. And it was a good scorecard.
The other thing is we keep it consistent year over year.
Yeah.
So you can see your trends. We'll add a question or tweak a question, maybe one per year. But it's really important for us to see a 3 or 4 year trend to see how you're doing. Yeah. And the vendors get a lot of value when we're consistent about this, so that's been important for us.
Yeah. So the other thing that you guys have traditionally done, and I participated in for a lot of years, was CLF, the Channel Leadership Forum, which was the vendor channel chiefs. And they sit in the room with your research people and go through a full day of, getting the benefit of research that you guys have done, but then being able to talk about it with their peers and get a sense for, sort of what it meant and what was driving it, what you could do about it. And frankly, I used to walk away with a ton of, really good ideas from my peers. Yeah. And, so I'm assuming that that's still happening?
It's an all-day event on Wednesday.
It is, yep.
We take advantage of it being part of here because a lot of those channel chiefs are already here to participate in the event. So this year, the research that's fresh that we're going to be covering is as-a-service research, and a lot of research around the marketplace. But Channelytics is a research subscription model, and we have about anywhere from 10 to 12 modules that we do research around. It's very in-depth research. It's used by our sponsors, our vendor sponsors, to really educate their teams, understand the market, and a lot of the times justify things that they need to do in the market. So we keep those modules refreshed, and when we do these CLFs, we do them virtually every month, and then we do it once a year in person here. And it's really our way of getting together anywhere from 25 to 30 of the top companies and their channel chiefs to talk about relevant, in-depth research. These are, like I said, it's an all-day event for us, so there'll be a lot of interaction. It's almost like an advisory council, but not for us. It's an advisory council for them and their peers. Yeah. We provide research and we provide topics and we facilitate, but it really is about their interaction.
Yeah. No, I think it's, I did it for a long time, and it was really valuable. You get a lot of good ideas, you get a lot of good feedback, plus you get to, interact with a lot of the folks who, frankly, have gone on to, do lots of different things in the channel.
Yep.
Right? So what? So that's one of the topics. What was the other topic you said was
the cloud marketplaces and what's going on?
Yeah.
And we've refreshed that research. That's absolutely something that everybody's interested in. How is it going to impact it in your world? How does the distribution cloud marketplaces and the billions of dollars they're spending to build those out? How do they compete with the CSPs, with Amazon, Google, Microsoft? what's the interaction with the partners and what role do they play? And frankly, in some of these marketplaces, the sellers, start to bleed in. You got resellers, you got ISVs, you got CSPs. So it really starts to pull things together, and I don't think it's hit its equilibrium. We still don't know what that's going to look like. Yeah. We're seeing it grow. We're seeing people struggle with it. Getting on the marketplace is just the very first step. Yep. You got to market yourself on the marketplace. You got to support that. So it's an interesting dynamic, and it is one of those major changes in the industry.
Well, I think that if you look at the transition over the last 15 years, let's say, there was a long period of time, probably 3 or 4 years, that people were trying to figure out cloud.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing. It was like, well, we know it's there. We know it's coming. We're not quite sure how it's going to materialize. We're not quite sure how you're going to operationalize it. And more importantly, how you're going to monetize it, right? In fact, I remember doing an interview at one point, probably at one of these events, and I was asked a question, and I was like, well, I'm not convinced. Because, it was just kind of lingering. Shows how smart I was back then. But
it's probably going to stay with us.
Yeah, Frank. I think it's probably going to be there for a while. Yeah, I realized that when I was trying to sell storage. That's when I realized that it wasn't working really well. Yeah. That didn't go real well. It didn't do that very long. But yeah, the other thing though is I think the confusion over sort of the cloud marketplaces and the platforms. Yeah. I think there's a lot of education that needs to be done in the marketplace, over that, right?
Yeah.
And I know, like, for example, for the distributors, you're right, they're investing huge amounts of dollars. And what people don't quite get all the time is that there is still a ton of work that needs to be done in the B2B space. Now, in the consumer space, it's a little different. Somebody can get online and buy something and, they're up and running. But in the B2B space, when you're selling to small businesses, there's tons of things that need to get done, and the disties are filling, those gaps. And I don't think people recognize that and understand that. I mean, guys like you do, and the channel chiefs, I think, do. But I think the more we can educate the marketplace on it, so I'm hoping that research will do some of that.
Yeah, well, and I had a meeting today. The beauty about this is I get to meet with a lot of vendors and distributors from around the industry, and I get to hear a lot while I'm here for the next 2 or 3 days. I've met with Ingram.
Yeah.
And when I listen to Dennis talk from Ingram about, kind of where their business is going and the marketplaces and, kind of how they're really changing the dynamics of how they market, how they work with their partners, they're really becoming the business support for their resellers. I think we're seeing a change in distribution, and just listening to the discussion today was, a recognition that evolution is continuing, and the relationship between the partners and their distributor is becoming critical business connections. And so that's an interesting play. I really, I've worked in distribution with you for a long time, and I said this on stage. I think distribution has gone through as much change with as much input and output in this industry as anything we've done.
Yeah.
How many times have we heard somebody say distribution is dead?
Yep.
Or the distributors are dinosaurs?
Yep.
And now they just keep evolving.
Yeah,
They just keep evolving.
Well, you know why? Because there's 40 years of investment there. And what people take for granted is that 40 years of stuff that has to get done, that's the backbone of how we do business. But because they do it so well and they've done it for so long, it gets overlooked.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what about the new stuff? Well, the new stuff is coming, but you have to do it on a platform. It's like building a house. It's got to have the foundation there, and it's got to make sense. But I think, the more we can tell the story, the better, the better we'll be, there. And I think the vendors, the channel chiefs, frankly, want and need that information, because in a lot of cases they're going back inside their companies and they're talking to sort of the non-channel people in their company who's saying, well, I understood the value of distribution when they were a warehouse and a bank, but now tell me the value of distribution in the world of, cloud and platform and marketplaces, and got to be able to tell that story because it's there.
Yeah. Remember when we were in that same transition, when we went from box licenses to software keys and software licenses.
Totally.
everybody thought the same thing.
Totally. Yeah.
End of distribution.
Somebody's
There's
got to
no
do
role
the work.
for them.
Yeah, somebody's got to do the work.
Still got to
The
process.
work is still
you still got to
there.
process orders. You still got to fund the backlog. It all still has a lot of work to do.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know you guys do a good job with the distributors. I know you've got good partnerships. Many of them. You're working on a lot of various research projects, etc. So you guys get it, but you should, because you're right in the forefront. The other thing is, with the distributors, what's also changed is it used to be a very sort of linear, go-to-market model. It went from vendor to disti to end user, or vendor to direct to solution provider to end user, and now it's more of an ecosystem play. Yeah. And there's a chart that IDC has actually runs around and shows, which is a really interesting chart, which really depicts graphically how that ecosystem works, because there's so many interfaces now. So a lot more complicated than it was.
Yeah, it's not the builder, seller, buyer model that we knew in the past.
No, not even that close. So, okay, so we're here in North America. We're talking about North America, but channel companies had some really exciting announcements over the last, certainly over the last 3 months, but over the last year probably, and now international. Right, so talk a little bit about that and what you're doing there.
So we've made 3 very strategic acquisitions since the beginning of 2021. The first one was a consulting organization out of Seattle. Audience was their name. Yep. We put Audience and iPad together, and we now really have a formidable consulting organization to support our research and to work with our customers. We have over 100 on-staff consultants. We have another 50 plus more that we use on a regular basis as contractors, and feeding the research for Channelytics, making sure that we're on the forefront of this thought leadership, and that we can help partners kind of think through their channel, think through their strategic communications, and we do everything from change management to program design. And so that piece of the business was really beefed up when we bought Audience. They have a specific skill, being out of Seattle and having strong relationships with the cloud providers up there. They had a specific skill set in marketplaces and as a service models, and that was something we saw as that and security are always top of mind in terms of we need to stay on the forefront of that if we're going to be a thought leader in this industry. So that was a U.S.-based company. At the beginning of the year, we were a U.S.-based company. But in February, we announced an acquisition of B Channels. We had competed against B Channels when I was a vendor. I bought their services. I always respected the hell out of them. But they're an agency, a marketing agency that has done some incredible things in concierge services and the data structure that they've built out and what they look at worldwide with a database of 750,000 partners. And just their model to be able to deliver campaigns throughout the world in 20 different languages in almost every country. And supporting, one of the most important things I hear from the vendor partners is, I love what the channel company does. I wish you could do it worldwide. Yeah. So picking them up really gave us a footprint. They've got offices in Oxford, Madrid, Malaysia, and Sydney. That was the second one. So that kind of opened us up, gave us a good data capability, enhanced our agency, and gave us a worldwide footprint. And then we're really committed to expanding CRN to a worldwide footprint. And one of the big things we needed to do is to get back the CRN UK brand that had been independent from us for a long time. We have a couple of nice, friendly franchise relationships, but that one was an independent. Yep. And if we're going to be a worldwide media organization, we needed that. So we went out and purchased Incisive's technology division. They also have a really nice end user magazine called Computing that fits nicely with MES. And they're a European-based company. It really rounds us out. We got a little bit of work to do in the APJ region. We got India and Sydney right now, but we're going to build out 2 media brands in CRN and computing worldwide. Yeah,
I think it's a big deal. I mean, for sure, the research and the consulting on a global basis makes a ton of sense, because a lot of the vendors, in fact, a lot of the ones that I'm sure that are in CLF are global, right? They're not just the North America leaders, they're the global leaders. and therefore they want a global offering. I can tell you with personal experience, your editor for the UK participated in our event in June, Nima, and did a great job. She hosted a panel on inclusion and diversity, and did a really good job, and went over really well by the but with the audience. And traditionally we hadn't done that, in Europe, and so that was a really nice change and a nice addition. So it was good to have CRN there.
We're going to build out the model globally. We're still going to have to execute in the regions.
Yeah.
Not everything translates, but I do like the idea they had a fight night in the UK where the vendors and the solution providers get together in a ring and box with each other. You think we could do that in the U.S.?
I don't know.
You and I?
No, I don't
come
think
on, put the gloves on.
Maybe 20 years ago, maybe
come on.
we might have, but I don't think that'll work.
Not everything will translate.
Yeah. So, so closing here, tell me a little bit about what's coming up. So obviously, you guys have a series of events that go out through the year.
Yeah.
And they're targeted to different audiences with different, types of things. So what's next? What's happening for the rest of the year?
So next is our MES Midsize Enterprise Summit event, where we have end users come in. It's basically a very similar format to Exchange, boardroom format, hosted model. We're doing that in Orlando. That's coming up in September. In October, we have both Best of Breed and we have our Next Gen Conference, both channel events.
Yep.
And then we have our Women of the Channel event. It's going to be, it's sold out already, believe it or not. It's been sold out for over a month. There's just a huge excitement around that. We've gotten to the max of, for those who have been, we do it at the Hilton in Midtown, and we could not put another body in that hotel. So it's going to be a really exciting, charged up event. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, and I can't name them by name because they're fairly new to me. We picked them up in July, but there's another series of events going on in the UK and in EMEA. They have a very packed second half with award shows, seminars, and channel events and end user events that will be going on in the European side of the house, including they have a Women in Tech group that they get together every year, and we're taking our Women in the Channels and we're going to combine those efforts, and we're going to do a joint event this year in November in the UK.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. It was interesting during our event. After we did the panel, I kind of got up and it was introducing the next panel, and I kind of looked around, and we had 150 people in the room, and there were maybe 15 women, right? Yeah. And that should be triple, right? With 10%, it ought to be 30, 40, 50. And so there's work to do there, but I think they're open to it, and I think it'll work. Plus, you guys. I mean, you guys created the model. I mean, the Women in the Channel model, I don't know, it was 6, 7 years ago when you first started it.
Actually, I think it's over 10.
Is it over 10 now? Yeah.
Over 10
I mean, it was groundbreaking at the time, but now it's sort of like everybody wants to participate.
Yeah. And we just launched, I know you know this, last year, we launched the Inclusive Leadership Network to talk. It's really call it a sister organization, because you can't talk about inclusion and diversity and belongings without talking about women's issues. But we wanted to keep the women's issues front of mind and pick up the rest of the dialogue. That's been launched, and we've got some great support from our sponsors. The membership is building, the content is building. So if you fast forward 10 years, I would expect that that's got the same impact. We got over 5,000 women in our community, and the events we do with Women in the Channel are just stellar events.
Yeah, good. All right, well, well done. You guys are doing terrific work. I'm happy to be here, and keep it up, and I look forward to seeing you at the next event.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Absolutely.